Welcome to Equine Euthanasia and End-of-Life Options, a veterinary roundtable presented by the Maryland Equine Transition Service, a program of the Maryland Horse Council Foundation. Please be sure to watch all 4 parts. I have a really good question from a local rescue. This is from Loring. We're talking about this transitioning into disposal options. Dr. Sabota, I know you've been working on this a bit too. Lori's question is, as president of a Maryland horse rescue, I am periodically faced with equine euthanasia decisions for our residents, as well as presented with questions from volunteers and local horse owners about options for cremation, burial, and especially humane and respectful options available for disposal and removal of the horse's body. There's a small list of available companies. I'm sure everyone on here is well aware that our options in Maryland are limited. Is there a comprehensive list of all the information, including company of proprietors' names, phone numbers, locations, and hours of service, as well as costs, would be extremely appreciated. Now, I know, Dr. Sabota, you've added to the METS list that we've put up on our site. What are some words of wisdom or some advice for these owners and rescue people for disposing of a horse after euthanasia? What are some key ways that they can go about looking for those resources?
I think that's really an important part of your veterinary client-patient relationship. You should be speaking with your veterinarian, trying to plan for this ahead of time a little bit. And that's where we do try to plan ahead a bit. If you see that this may be coming down the pipeline, or you can try to plan for it. And some owners are more proactive than others and trying to think about it and be proactive. And we're in a fortunate circumstance in our area where we have 1 or 2 reliable resources, and that's wonderful. But I know there are some deserts out there that may not have as many reliable resources, and we as a veterinary community could certainly probably try to brainstorm more and try to help create better lists. But some of this is also business in the sense of entrepreneurship and who's out there doing this kind of service, and it's certainly not a subsidized service, right? And so this is a business, and certainly having that veterinary client-patient relationship is important. Trying to establish some thoughts beforehand is valuable, but that's not always possible. We know that, and maybe we need to work together as veterinarians to try to continue to compile that list. But there are going to continue to be some deserts out there potentially, or you can certainly have a certain amount of money, right, set aside in the sense of, okay, this is going to be X amount of dollars to do this, and trying to plan ahead, right? And that's what happens in the human space a bit. We try to plan ahead for certain things with end of life, and I think that's going to continue to be an issue, and it'll continue to be a challenge. But there are resources out there, and I think that's important to have that relationship with your veterinarian. Make sure you have some ideas of where to go or what you want to do, whether it's cremation or disposal, or rendering's not really done as much anymore, certainly, but certainly composting and different ideas of composting.
Yeah, I think that it's one point that I've certainly found with our METS owners who are looking at euthanasia. They expect the euthanasia cost, and then the disposal cost is not something that they're prepared for. Which is interesting because it is an extra in the small animal world as well. But I think it's not commonly thought of in the equine industry. Have you found that? How do you deal with that with owners when they are completely, taken out of left field by the fact that they're going to have to pay for disposal as well?
I'll leave that answer. I'll answer that in a bit.
I guess, I don't think people just really consider it. They don't consider that you now have 1,200 pounds of of an animal there. It's not, you know, I don't think it even comes into their mind. We are in one of the deserts that Dr. Sabota was talking about. We have one gentleman who comes out of Delaware who covers the entire most of the Eastern Shore. And that's what he does. You know, his costs go up, fuel costs go up. I mean, the gentleman's available all times of day, weekends. I mean, it's a tough life. And I mean, I don't think I can give quotes. He quotes by the distance he travels from Delaware. And, you know, he's got to make a living too. I empathize with my clients. They can actually get a backhoe, most of them cheaper than they can get the gentleman to come dispose of them. But I don't think people just consider that at all. It just never enters their mind that now they have 1,200 pounds to be disposed of.
I ran across a document that somebody at the equerry had compiled, spending a lot of time on the phone with various health departments and animal control and ag extension people for all of the different counties in Maryland. And burial was actually the, I don't think health departments have particularly signed on to it, but burial was actually the legally recommended solution in a lot of instances. Katie, I can dig that out, and if you want to post that.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll put it on our website and link it when we publish this too. So they were recommending burial even when barbiturates are used?
Yeah, they didn't make a distinction.
Yeah.
Most of the concern was whether it was a infectious or contagious disease that caused the demise in the regulations. The regulations, which were probably quite old, 20 or 30 years old. I tell people that I have not run across anybody that got in trouble with the county government for burying a horse. I'm not saying that it's impossible for that to happen, to be on good terms with your neighbors and don't do it right next to their well. But it has not been a problematical solution other than the logistics of getting somebody to do it.
Dr. Good point. I think certainly historically what I've read, 10 feet down and 300 feet from a well was somewhat the recommendation previously. And I do not know anybody who's gotten in trouble for burying their horse on their property. I'm certain that it can happen or could happen. I know the composting individual in our area, to some degree, it's probably similar in price, and she may be a little more expensive than having someone come and backhoe a hole, if you will. So there are some business aspects in the sense of what do you want to do and how much it's going to cost. That's just competitiveness in that space. But certainly all of those things have happened, and certainly it may be less expensive and less of a problem burying a horse than certainly cremation or composting.
I do know. Sorry.
I was just saying, certainly it's important to bury or to eliminate that animal, right? Because we are worried about barbiturates, and certainly with wildlife and bald eagles and other animals, certainly there have been deaths, and that is under another purview, federal law. I don't know if any veterinarians have ever gotten in trouble for that as of yet, but certainly that's something we need to be conscientious of as veterinarians, and making sure that animal is eliminated correctly if you do inject a barbiturate.
I do know Delaware, this gentleman that covers Eastern Shore will, I think the cost for removal anywhere in Delaware is $50 or $100 because the Soil Conservation Service in Delaware I'm not sure it's to prevent barbiturates in the soil or not, subsidizes the removal of the horses. So I have clients that literally cross the fence. One's in Delaware, one's in Maryland. Someone pays $340 to have their horse removed, and the other one pays $50. And so that's they could be within a mile of each other. And so that's a huge point over here. Is I have many horse owners asking how come Maryland can't do something to help subsidize the removal of horses. And as of now, I don't have an answer for them.
Is the answer is call your representative.
Yeah.
In our world, oh no, sorry, Katie. I was gonna say 30% of pet owners do burial in our space. Obviously, size is a difference, but I think, and I opened my own crematory because it's such a big thing here in South Florida, and we have a big equine community here actually in South Florida, and a lot have called us for cremation. But I do aquamation, so it's alkaline hydrolysis, and our machines are too small. So pigs and goats are as big as we can handle. But I'm amazed there's nobody around here. So it's at all in South Florida. So it would have to be burial. But I think it's hard for those to watch also their horse getting moved after people don't like we are big about how we handle the pet, and we roll them nicely, we put a little pillow, like it's a whole big experience. And to see a 1,200-pound horse getting pulled onto a truck is shocking. And also, if it does go to a crematory, is that one large enough to handle the pet intact and the horse intact? And there's a lot to that industry that I've learned that what they have to do if it's not large enough to handle the pet intact. And I always say we gotta be open and honest with families. Like, we can't sugarcoat this, and like, it's not our fault if there's not a crematory nearby to handle something. You know, it's not our fault if there's areas where it's the landfill is what the option is, and it's not our fault. But prepping them in advance is so important because it is expensive. For us, it's $300 for a cremation, $200 for a cat, let's say. And people are like you said, Dr. Callan, like, they're not ready for that. And it's, they're ready, or Justin, you said that they're ready for the euthanasia, but not for the aftercare. And if they die on their own, this is what I also tell people, what do you do? Because now you've got a Great Dane and you have to try to bring this Great Dane into a clinic for cremation. And it's hard. So prepping, having all of that information on your website is also really helpful. So that way they've got it available. And when things happen in the bump of the night, they've got contacts. Well, we all know what business to go into.
My lawn is covered with depressed areas where mowing the lawn is bumping over Bill or Max.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, with that's another huge reason that METS, we have that money set aside, right? Because so many people, if they come to us, they are looking for euthanasia. They say, I can pay for the euthanasia, but I need help with either finding removal options or paying for it. And so it's, I think, really crucial that programs like METS are able to provide that for people, because it is kind of, I wouldn't say a luxury, but it's certainly a monetary commitment that not everyone's expecting. But shifting gears just a little bit, we have a great question from Christine. She said, considering that most horse owners are aware of and educated about humane euthanasia as a responsible end-of-life option, yet most remain unwilling to choose euthanasia based on their own emotional reluctance, how can our equine veterinarians support welfare by encouraging these owners to choose euthanasia over trying to rehome their aged, ill, or lame horse?
Deep breath.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a big question, and I think roundtables like this are a great way to open it up, because I don't think that there is one correct answer. I think it's a lot of kind of introducing this topic and having that conversation over and over again. But I'm not sure if anyone, Dr. Sabota, you seem to be thinking if there's anything that you'd like to share about it.
Well, I think certainly what Dr. Gardner was saying, just about a week early versus 1 day too late, is applicable here, and thinking about the best situation and scenario for the horse at hand, and really trying to guide the owner. It's a difficult question, right? This is where your bedside manner and your willingness to be open about this conversation is important. Yeah, I don't know if I have any tricks. I always tell people I don't think there are any heroes in euthanasia, right? And so within our space, certainly if people want to step away, there are hard parts about the euthanasia process that can be somewhat dramatic, right? Gravity happens, and so horses fall, or we do have to load that horse onto a trailer. And I just always try to tell people there are no heroes in this process, and it's not enjoyable necessarily for us, but if we can relieve that suffering, right, that's a gift. And so that's what we always work towards. And so I think the emphasis of your question was, how do we eliminate maybe some of these horses going to a bad home or a bad situation? Is that correct? And I think that's just, yeah, that's fortunately I feel good that our clientele do think about some of those things, and we have some very caring clientele, and that's been very beneficial. But that's not where, that's not every case. And oftentimes I guess we try to work it out, right? You think about and brainstorm about the situation, who can help or not help, and I think that's part of being part of the community. We are all part of this community and trying to figure out people's problems, trying to help them a bit.
I think also, what I'll do is this intractably lame horse or something like that. And I said, what happens if you sell this horse? I said, it's going to end up, no one's going to buy this horse. It's going to end up on a truck, going to Canada or something like that. Is it really worth your $200 or whatever you're going to get for meat price to do that? And then I also share stories. I had an awful euthanasia years ago it was a donkey that had gone down, and was probably colicky or something like that, but it had melted the snow it was lying in, and then it froze to the ground. So this donkey was still alive, and it was frozen to the ground by its hair. And I tell people, a prey animal like a horse, I think that would be the worst thing that could happen. It can't get up, it can't move, it's frozen to the ground. And I'm like, you don't want that to happen to your horse. You don't want your horse for that to happen. So you need to think about things ahead of time. It's okay to euthanize them before they get to this point where they're down and frozen to the ground. I mean, it was horrible. It was the worst thing I think I've ever seen. So
I think falling back on the line that euthanasia is not the worst thing that can happen to a horse. It's educational.
Yeah, I think an educational component to that too is one of our supporters Amber talked about how many horse rescues will go to auction and buy horses with the knowledge that they're buying them in order to humanely euthanize them. So I think that what we see with people is a level of unknowing what these horses are going to go through when they're put on the truck, when they're sent to auction, what that fate looks like. Do people put their lame horses on the truck to go to auction so they don't have to deal with it? Probably. But I think it comes back to what you were saying, Dr. Adu, about, educating, and that's the main reason behind this roundtable, is trying to help people understand euthanasia and that it is not the worst thing that can happen to an animal. The truck is the worst thing that can happen to a horse, right? Like, that is one of the worst things. And we had a couple questions asking about financial assistance too, and METS is here to help with that. We have funds to pay for euthanasia costs and disposal costs, but it's a drop in the bucket. You know, it would be great to have a subsidy program like Delaware has for disposal. We have to maybe look into that and see if we can't pull something like that up here in Maryland. But it is, I think all of it is based on education and just the public at large having misconceptions about euthanasia, misconceptions about auction, and what it really means to care for an animal for its entire life, you know, even the ugly parts.
So can I ask you a question? Forgive my ignorance. So the auction truck is to be sold for meat, usually?
Yeah.
Not always, and sometimes not the first time it goes to auction, but
Older.
frequent flyers that will get bought and then go back to the auction.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the pipeline. There's auctions up and down the country, and horses will be sent from auction to auction until they sell. Sometimes they put in kill pens, what we call kill pens, and then some horses are eventually bought to be sent across the border to Mexico, Canada. Less so to Canada these days. Their regulations have changed a little bit, so more American horses are going to Mexico than Canada. And then a lot of them get shipped to Japan for slaughter as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I think those that may not be able to afford the euthanasia and the disposal, they feel like that's their only option. My heart goes out to them because I could not imagine my loved animal knowing that I can't afford any other option but to put him on a truck that's going to be horrible, or not great. So that's sad. There are going to be those that don't believe in euthanasia. So then my point is, well, why are you putting them on a truck? Because clearly that's what's going to happen to them. So that makes no sense. And there are some that don't believe it and they want to keep it. And I've had a lot of that where they're like, are you Christian? And death and those questions. And I always say, God gave me the gift to do this. And this is why I'm going to do this. And with a name like Mary, I'm probably been to church once. So, so I try to throw in a little humor every now and then, but for this dark topic. But it is our responsibility. I feel sad for those that can't afford to do it. That breaks my heart. And is there something that we can do? And I think it's really important for the public to know. Oh, this is what I was going to say. I knew there was holding my tongue. It is important that people understand the euthanasia process because they're scared out of their mind if they've had it done before or they whatever. And one thing, Justin, I like to say is that the anesthesia stops the brain. The brain is what's in charge of the heart and all the other organs. So once the brain is gone, everything else slows down. And because if I just say it stops their heart, we know medically the next up is the brain, then it's all the other things. But people think of heart attacks because they're conscious and their heart stops, and that's painful. So I want them all to know it's unconsciousness happens first. The brain stops first. And owners, so many people don't know that. And so we can educate them on the processes of consciousness. And you can't suffer if you don't know, right? You don't know what's happening when you're under anesthesia for surgery. It's, when you wake up and you got to go through physical therapy and things like that. But suffering takes consciousness. And when we can take that away, we've ended that suffering. And then the biologics happen where breathing slows down, heart stops, and things like that. But I'm shocked at how many people don't know what it is. But you know what? I don't know if before I went to vet school, I knew exactly what it was. So it's okay to have some people that don't understand this process. And I'm really happy that I'm on this because there's a lot to this world that I don't understand, and it's opened my eyes and of the importance of this. Yeah, Maryland, we got to do something like Delaware. I don't even know if we have that in Florida. Florida needs to get involved.
I get told that every time I euthanize a horse. So how come Delaware? I'm like, I can't help it.
I mean,
I got to look into Florida now.
It would be so good for the welfare of horses because people would be less reluctant to euthanize when it's called for.
You're right. And the other thing is that it would be removing the phenobarbital from the ground supply,
Right.
which is until that gets, and I'm sure that's going to come to a point where that will be legislated, and that because it is contaminated, you're finding it now in a lot of sources. So at some point, that's going to be legislated, but I do think that having some type of option like that would make a huge difference to people. But in saying that, I also think there are people that honestly feel that this horse that they sell is going to a good home, that there are all these good homes out there that want your horse that can't be ridden or something like that. I don't know whether they honestly believe it or they just think they believe it, but
Yeah,
they
I think it's
feel that
just
there's a home for something that can't be ridden and is 25 years old and needs a special diet because they can't afford to feed it.
They're on Denial Island.
Yeah, it's a big island.
I think it tends to be a bit of kind of that blissful ignorance, right? They don't
Yeah.
want to accept that. It seems more palatable to think, oh, I can send my beloved horse to find another, person that's going to love them the same way I do, rather than take that step forward and accept that maybe that's not the case and that euthanizing is actually the better gift to that horse, the more humane aspect. And
Thank you for watching. Please be sure to watch the other installments of this roundtable. Also, please consider donating to keep METS a part of Maryland's equine community. Let us know if you'd like to see a roundtable about any other subjects. Thank you very much and have a great day.